In a controversial move, the United States has decided to supply Ukraine with cluster bombs, a decision that has garnered strong opposition from several allied nations. The use of cluster bombs, banned by over 100 countries due to their indiscriminate danger to civilians, has sparked concerns about the potential long-lasting impact and casualties they may cause. Welcome to Slant News. If you want to support, you can subscribe to our channel. Several allies of the US have expressed concerns over the decision by Washington to provide cluster bombs to Ukraine. On Friday, the US confirmed the shipment of these controversial weapons, with President Joe Biden acknowledging it as a very difficult decision. However, the UK, Canada, New Zealand, and Spain have all voiced their opposition to the use of cluster bombs. Over 100 countries have banned these munitions due to the significant threat they pose to civilian lives. Cluster bombs release numerous smaller bomblets that can cause indiscriminate casualties over a wide area. Additionally, there is controversy surrounding the high failure rate of these munitions, resulting in unexploded bomblets that can remain on the ground for years and pose a constant danger. President Biden explained in an interview with CNN that he had discussed the decision with allies, emphasizing that it was part of a military aid package worth $800 million. He stated that he was initially hesitant but ultimately acted due to Ukraine's dwindling ammunition supplies. However, human rights organizations such as Amnesty International criticized the decision, citing the grave threat to civilian lives posed by cluster munitions even long after the conflict has ended. Jake Sullivan, the U.S. National Security Advisor, defended the decision by stating that the American cluster bombs being sent to Ukraine had a much lower failure rate than those already used by Russia in the conflict. Despite this explanation, some Western allies of the US declined to endorse the decision. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, prior to a meeting with President Biden, highlighted that the UK had signed the Convention on Cluster Munitions, which prohibits the production and use of these weapons and discourages their use. New Zealand's Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins, expressed even stronger opposition, emphasizing the indiscriminate and lasting damage cluster bombs can cause to innocent people. Spain's Defense Minister, Margarita Robles, reaffirmed her country's commitment to prohibiting certain weapons and bombs from being sent to Ukraine, including cluster bombs. Canada shared similar concerns, particularly regarding the potential impact on children, and emphasized its compliance with the Convention on Cluster Munitions. It is worth noting that the US, Ukraine, and Russia have not signed the convention, and both Moscow and Kiev have used cluster bombs during the war. Germany, a signatory of the treaty, stated that it would not provide such weapons to Ukraine but understood the rationale behind the US decision. Ukraine's defense minister provided assurances that the cluster bombs would only be used to break through enemy defense lines and not in urban areas. While several NATO allies distanced themselves from the US decision to supply Ukraine with cluster bombs, General Sir Richard Shirreff, a former deputy commander of NATO in Europe, defended the move. He argued that these weapons would aid Ukraine in breaking through Russian lines, suggesting that if the West had provided more arms earlier, the need for cluster bombs would have been avoided. Here we wrap up the news on this topic. And be sure to subscribe to our channel.